The silence of the Kepler shroud was a lie, a thick blanket thrown over a graveyard of screaming ghosts. Elias Thorne knew this better than anyone. For 10 years, the shroud had been his hunting ground, his prison, and his penance. A swirling nebula of rust-colored dust and shattered starlight where the bones of dead empires lay waiting for scavengers like him. His ship, the Stardust Drifter, was a ghost of a similar vintage, a patched-up, long-haul salvager whose hull was more weld than original plating and whose engines coughed and sputtered with the weary rhythm of a dying man. He stood on the bridge, a cramped, perpetually dim space that smelled of ozone, stale coffee, and the faint, metallic tang of fear. The main viewport was a smear of cosmic grime, framing the slow tumble of a derelict freighter from the Xylos incursion, its spine broken, its cargo holds long since picked clean by bigger, faster crews. Elias ran a hand over his tired face, the scruff on his jaw rasping against his calloused palm. He was too old for this game. His reflexes a step slower, his optimism a distant memory burned away by too many bad deals and too few good finds. The only things that kept him going were the crushing weight of his debts to the Wyvern Consortium and the 2 souls aboard who, for reasons he'd never understand, trusted him with their lives. One of them, Anya, was hunched over her console, her face illuminated by the cascade of green data scrolling across the screen. She was a prodigy, a brilliant engineer who could coax miracles from the Drifter's ancient systems with little more than a soldering iron and a string of curses. She was far too smart to be crewing a rust bucket on the fringe, but the core worlds had no place for brilliant minds with inconvenient questions and a distaste for corporate servitude. Anything, Elias asked, his voice a low gravel. Anya shook her head without looking up, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. The big boys stripped it down to the frame weeks ago. We might be able to pull a few kilograms of neobium from the engine struts, but it's barely enough to cover our fuel costs back to Port Anarchy. Elias grunted, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. Port Anarchy was the last free-floating station in the sector, a wretched hive of scum, villainy, and exorbitant docking fees. It was also where a man named Silas Kane, a smiling enforcer for the Wyvern Consortium, would be waiting to collect. They were 2 weeks late on their last payment. Kaney's smiles were never a good sign. From the back of the bridge, a heavy thud announced the presence of their 3rd crew member. Jax was a mountain of a man, a genetically modified laborer from the Titan colonies who had bought his freedom with his fists and found a home on the Drifter. He spoke little, but his loyalty was as solid as the bulkhead he was currently leaning against, polishing a massive hydrospanner with a quiet intensity. He just looked at Elias and raised a single, thick eyebrow, the question clear. Elias simply shook his head, and Jax went back to his work. The silence stretched again, filled only by the hum of the life support and the creak of the ship's aging frame. This was the rhythm of their lifelong periods of crushing boredom and poverty, punctuated by brief moments of sheer terror. It was Anya who broke the monotony. She suddenly sat bolt upright, her brow furrowed in concentration. "That's odd," she murmured, tapping a sequence into her console. "Elias, you should see this." He moved to stand behind her, peering at the screen. A single, faint energy signature was pulsing on the deep-range scanner. It wasn't the chaotic splash of a dying reactor or the sharp signature of a modern vessel. It was clean, rhythmic, and impossibly steady. A heartbeat. "What is it?" he asked, A distress beacon. Anya shook her head, zooming in on the signal's origin. No, the frequency is all wrong, ancient. And look at the waveform. It's not a broadcast. It's more like leakage, a resonance, and it's coming from deep within the Serpent's Maw. The Serpent's Maw was a notoriously unstable region of the Shroud, a dense asteroid field choked with rogue magnetics and gravitic distortions, the final resting place of warships from conflicts so old they were barely footnotes in the history logs. No sane salvager went in there. The consortium had declared it off-limits, not out of concern for safety, but because their own heavy cruisers couldn't navigate the field without risking their shields. Whatever it is, it's not worth our time, Elias said, turning away. We need a score. Anya. Not a ghost story. Plot a course for the old trade lane. We'll see if any stragglers got caught in the last pirate raid. But Anya wasn't listening. Her eyes were wide with a feverish curiosity that Elias knew all too well. Elias. The periodicity of this signal. It's perfect. Too perfect. Nothing natural pulses like this. And no tech I've ever seen holds a pattern that's stable for more than a few hours. This thing has been pulsing for, well, the data stream suggests centuries, millennia, maybe. She ran a diagnostic, her expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief. And the source is massive, bigger than a capital ship, bigger than a station. The knot in Elias's stomach tightened for a different reason now. Greed was a powerful motivator, but curiosity was a far more dangerous drug in the Shroud. Still, millennia. A find that old, untouched by the consortium or the other vultures, could be the score of a lifetime. It could mean freedom. How deep? He asked, his voice betraying a sliver of the hope he was trying so hard to suppress. Deep, she confirmed. Right in the throat of the maw. The drifter's navigation computer will scream at us the whole way. He looked at Jax, who had stopped his polishing and was watching them, his dark eyes unreadable. Elias didn't need to ask. Jax went where he went. All right. Elias sighed, the words tasting like a gamble he couldn't afford to lose. Take us in, but slow and quiet. If the consortium has listening posts sniffing the edge of the maw, I don't want them to know we're here. The journey into the Serpent's Maw was a descent into madness. The ship groaned and shuddered as gravitic shears scraped against its shields, which flickered and spat under the strain. Chunks of crystalline debris and the jagged hulls of forgotten warships drifted past the viewport like silent, accusing specters. Anya was a maestro at the helm, her hands dancing over the controls, manually compensating for the wild fluctuations that would have sent the autopilot into a fatal spiral. Jax was strapped into the engineering bay, rerouting power and reinforcing the inertial dampeners, his calm voice a steady presence over the comms. Elias stood on the bridge, his knuckles white as he gripped the command chair, every nerve ending alight. This was stupid. This was reckless. This was the kind of desperate, last-ditch play that got crews killed. The rhythmic pulse on the scanner grew stronger, a steady drumbeat drawing them deeper into the chaos. After 6 agonizing hours, the field began to thin, opening into a strange, placid bubble of space, an eye in the storm, and in the center of it, floating in an eerie calm, was the source. It was a moonlet, a small, lumpy rock no more than 30 kilometers in diameter. It was dark, non-reflective, and, according to the initial scans, composed almost entirely of a worthless iron-nickel alloy. There were no lights, no structures, no sign that it was anything other than a dead piece of rock. "This can't be right," Anya said, her voice laced with disappointment. "The signal is coming from its core, dead center, but the geological survey shows it's solid. No caves, no hollows, nothing." Elias stared at the moonlit, a cold dread creeping up his spine. The heartbeat signal was thunderous on their sensors now, so powerful it was causing a low, sympathetic vibration through the drifter's hull. It felt alive. "Run a deep core spectrograph," he ordered. "Filter out the base metals. Look for anything artificial. Trace elements, composites, plastics." Anya's fingers flew. The computer churned through the data, stripping away layers of geological noise. And then, a wireframe image began to resolve on the main screen. It was a ghost, a faint outline buried deep within the rock, an outline that was not natural. It was impossibly huge, a thing of sharp angles and deliberate, deadly symmetry. The moonlet wasn't a rock. It was a tomb, a shell, a chrysalis of rock and metal that had formed around the object at his heart over countless eons. "My God," Anya breathed. "It's a ship. Elias, it's a ship." Jax's voice crackled over the comm. "Consortium patrol just appeared at the edge of the maw. A Wyvern-class destroyer. They're holding position, but they've launched probes." Panic flared in Elias's chest. They'd been detected. Or maybe the ship's growing resonance had finally tripped a deep space sensor. Either way, their time was up. "Can we get a clean scan of its exterior? Any markings, any way in?" Elias demanded. "There's too much interference from the rock," Anya said, frantically trying to refine the image. "Wait, there's a fissure on the dark side. Looks like a recent meteor impact. It's deep. It might go all the way through to the hull." It was their only chance. "Jax, give us a silent run. Divert all non-essential power to the engines and the structural integrity field. Anya, take us in. Don't even breathe on the controls." The drifter moved like a shadow, its running lights off, its thrusters firing in short, controlled bursts. They slipped into the moonlet's shadow, the massive rock eclipsing the distant, swirling colors of the nebula. The fissure was a jagged black scar, a wound in the ancient stone. Anya expertly guided the drifter inside, the ship's sensor arms scraping against the sides of the narrow canyon. The darkness was absolute. They were inside the tomb now, the heartbeat signal so loud it felt like it was coming from inside Elias's own skull. After a few 100 meters, the canyon opened into a vast, cavernous space. Their external lamps flickered on, illuminating a sight that stole the breath from their lungs. They were floating before a wall of pitted, scarred metal that rose for kilometers in every direction. It was the hull of the buried ship, a surface of alien alloys and impossible engineering. There was a single, massive symbol etched into the metal, faded but still visible, a stylized human hand clenched around a lightning bolt. It was a marking from the dark age of technology, from the first expansion, a time of myth and legend when humanity had built wonders and weapons that dwarfed anything in the modern era. And just below it, a gaping hole, an ancient hangar bay torn open by the same meteor that had created the fissure. "Take us inside," Elias whispered, his voice hoarse. Anya eased the drifter through the opening. The interior was a silent, sprawling cathedral of dormant machinery. Emergency lights on the hangar deck flickered to life as they approached, their pale, crimson glow revealing rows upon rows of sleek, deadly-looking starfighters, all resting in their launch cradles, waiting for pilots who had turned to dust thousands of years ago. Anya set the drifter down on the deck with a soft hiss of landing gear. For a long moment, the three of them just stared, overwhelmed by the scale, the age, for the sheer, silent power of the place. The air, when they finally ran an analysis, was thin but breathable, preserved in this sealed tomb for millennia. Leaving Jax to guard the ship, Elias and Anya donned vac suits, more for protection against the unknown than the environment, and stepped out onto the deck. Their boots echoed in the profound silence. The heartbeat was everywhere now, a low, thrumming vibration that resonated up from the floor plates. "The power source is still active," Anya said, her voice hushed with awe as she scanned her surroundings with a handheld device. "On a low-power, self-sustaining loop. I've never seen anything like it. This ship, it isn't dead. Elia, it's sleeping." They moved cautiously, following a series of massive corridors that were clearly designed for armored troops. Not people. The architecture was severe, brutalist. All function and no comfort. This was not a vessel of exploration or commerce. It was a warship built for one purpose, utter domination. They eventually found their way to a central command lift, which, to their astonishment, activated as they approached, its doors sighing open. It carried them upwards, through the heart of the colossal machine, finally depositing them onto the ship's bridge. It was a vast, circular chamber, tiered with dozens of dark consoles and empty command thrones. The forward view was a solid wall of rock, but above them, a transparent dome of armored crystal showed the swirling chaos of the serpent's maw. At the center of the room was a single, obsidian pillar, the AI core. As they stepped onto the bridge, the thrumming intensified, and the pillar began to glow with a soft, internal light. Consoles flickered to life around them, displaying characters in a long, dead dialect of Old Terran. Then, the signal changed. It was no longer just a heartbeat. It became a sharp, focused beam of energy that lanced out from the AI core. It wasn't aimed at their equipment. It was aimed at Elias. He cried out and stumbled back, clutching his head. His neural implant, a standard-issue data port he'd had since his brief, inglorious stint in the corporate fleets, was on fire. Data, raw and incomprehensible, flooded his mind star charts of forgotten galaxies, weapons schematics of terrifying power, battle logs from a war that ended before his species had even learned to write. It was a deluge of history and fury, an agony of pure information. Anya rushed to his side, but he waved her away, his eyes screwed shut. Through the storm in his mind, a single, coherent thought finally emerged, not in words, but in a clean, cold burst of machine logic. It was the ship, asking a question. It was a system diagnostic, a handshake request sent across 5,000 years of silence. On the main console before him, a single line of text burned into existence, the ship's designation finally revealing itself. IHS Vanguard, and deep within his own consciousness, the AI's query echoed, stripped of all emotion, a simple, terrifying request for status from its new and entirely accidental commander. Cognitive link established. Command authority not found. State your designation and intent. Outside, at the edge of the Serpent's Maw, the Wyvern destroyer turned its bow towards the dead moonlet, its weapon ports beginning to glow a hungry, predatory red. They were no longer alone. The AI's query was not a sound, but a pressure inside Elias's skull, a cold, clean void waiting to be filled. State your designation and intent. Outside, the Wyvern destroyer was a shark scenting blood, its weapon systems charging with a flare of energy visible even to the naked eye. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the fog of the neural link. He was a salvager, a debtor, a man running from his own past. He had no designation. His intent was to not die in the next 30 seconds. He squeezed his eyes shut, focusing past the pain, and pushed a thought into the link, shaping it with the desperate authority of a cornered animal. Designation Commander. Intent Survival. Defend this vessel against immediate threat. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. The pressure in his mind remained inquisitive, analytical. He felt the AI accessing his neural implant, peeling back layers of his memory, his history, his failures, all in the space of a microsecond. It was a violation so profound he felt his soul shiver. Then, the pressure shifted, replaced by a new sensation: acceptance. Command authority recognized. Defensive protocols active. The bridge of the Vanguard woke up. It was not a sudden activation, but a slow, tectonic shifting of power. A deep, resonant hum vibrated up from the deck plates, a sound so low it felt like the ship itself was clearing its throat after an age of slumber. The obsidian pillar at the center of the bridge pulsed with a fierce, white light, and the dormant consoles lit up in sequence, their ancient screens displaying streams of tactical data that Elias, through the link, understood with a terrifying clarity. He could see the Wyvern destroyer not as a ship, but as a collection of vulnerabilities, its shield frequencies, its reactor output, its crew complement of 112 souls. The ship's intelligence fed him this information without context or morality, as a simple statement of fact. Elias, what's happening? Anya's voice was a distant echo. He raised a hand to silence her, his other hand gripping the command throne before him. He could feel the Vanguard drawing power from its core, a contained star of impossible energy, channeling it into systems that had not been fired in recorded history. On the tactical display, only he could truly comprehend. He saw a primary weapon system designate itself as ready, the Graviton Lance. The destroyer fired first. A volley of plasma torpedoes, the best the consortium could field, streaked through the void and slammed into the moonlet. On the drifter, the impact would have been catastrophic. Here, on the bridge of the Vanguard, it was nothing. A soft chime echoed through the bridge, and Elias saw a data stream indicating the ship's outer shell. The rock and asteroid debris accumulated over millennia had absorbed the entire volley without the ship's actual shields even needing to engage. The AI offered a new piece of information into his mind. Threat ineffective. Recommend tactical response annihilation. Annihilation. The coldness of the word chilled him to the bone. These were consortium thugs, but they were still people. He hesitated, the weight of 112 lives pressing down on him. Then, the link showed him the destroyer charging its main cannon, a spinal-mounted particle beam capable of cracking a small moon. Capable of cracking their moon. They wouldn't stop. They would dig them out and kill them for the prize. His survival instinct overrode his conscience. Authorized tactical response, he thought, the command leaving a bitter metallic taste in his soul. The hum of the ship deepened into a bone-jarring thrum. Elias felt, through the link, the weapon charging. It was not the feeling of a machine. It was the feeling of a god of destruction drawing a breath. He saw through the ship's external sensors as a section of the moonlet's rocky exterior peeled away, retracting with silent, impossible precision to reveal a cannon aperture so vast the drifter could have flown into it. A sliver of pure darkness, a tear in space-time, formed at its tip. Then it fired. There was no beam of light, no visible projectile. There was only a silent, instantaneous distortion of space between the Vanguard and the destroyer. For a fraction of a second, the Wyvern-class ship seemed to warp, its hull twisting in on itself as if crushed by an invisible hand. Then, with a flash of light that momentarily blinded the Vanguard's sensors, it simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not vaporized. It was gone. The tactical display in Elias's mind updated with chilling simplicity. Threat neutralized. Silence descended upon the bridge, broken only by Anya's ragged gasp. "What? What did you do?" she whispered, staring at the empty patch of space where the destroyer had been. Elias collapsed into the command throne, the neural link receding slightly, leaving him feeling hollowed out and shaking. "I defended us," he said, the words feeling thin and inadequate. The ship's intelligence, his silent partner in the act of mass murder, remained impassive, its core glowing with a steady, patient light. Jax's voice came over their suit comms from the drifter, his tone as calm and steady as ever, though Elias could detect a new edge to it. "Elias, we have a problem." That flash, it lit up the whole shroud. Anyone watching this sector just saw it, and the consortium will know it was their ship that went dark. He was right. They had traded a single, immediate threat for a much larger, inevitable one. The Wyvern Consortium would not let the destruction of one of their destroyers go unanswered. They would send a fleet. They were no longer scavengers who had stumbled upon a treasure. They were fugitives who had just bloodied the nose of the most powerful corporate entity on the fringe. They were targets. "We have to get out of here," Anya said, her scientific awe now warring with a very practical fear. "But how we can't take the drifter back through the maw, not with the consortium hunting us. And this ship, it's encased in a mountain of rock." Elias pushed himself to his feet, leaning on the throne for support. The link with the Vanguard was still active, a quiet hum at the back of his consciousness. He could feel the ship's systems, a phantom limb of incomprehensible power. He could feel its dormant engines, its silent life support, its fully stocked armories. It was a complete, self-contained world of terrifying potential. "Status of propulsion systems," he queried the AI. The response was instant, a flood of data that his implant translated into understandable terms. "Sublight engines nominal, FTL drives operational, pending system diagnostics. Power core output at 3%. 3%. The weapon that had erased a destroyer had been fired using a fraction of the ship's waking power." The thought was staggering. "Can this vessel break free of its shell?" he asked. "Affirmative. Main thrusters are capable of generating sufficient force to shatter the surrounding rock strata. Recommend controlled burst to avoid structural damage to hangar bay." "We're not taking the drifter," Elias said aloud, looking between Anya and the distant shape of their old ship, now looking like a child's toy in the cavernous hangar. "We're taking this one." Anya stared at him, her eyes wide. "Elias, we don't know anything about this ship. Its systems are 5,000 years old. We don't know where it will take us or if the life support will even last. And that thing in your head, what is it doing to you?" He looked at his shaking hands. He felt a coldness inside him that hadn't been there before, a detached, analytical calm that was not his own. The AI hadn't just given him control, it had given him a piece of its own nature. "It's keeping us alive," he said, his voice flat. He focused on the link again, diving deeper. He didn't just ask questions now, he searched. He pulled up the ship's original mission logs, its last standing orders. The data streams were fragmented, corrupted by time. But he got flashes, images, feelings, a war against an unnamed, non-humanoid enemy of terrifying power. A last, desperate order to seal the ship, enter a low-power hibernation state, and wait for a new commander with a compatible neural signature to awaken it. A failsafe, a time capsule of military might. This ship wasn't a relic. It was a loaded gun, left in a drawer for millennia, waiting for a hand to close around its grip. His hand. "Jax," he said into the comm, his voice now filled with a resolve that surprised even himself. "Strip the drifter. Bring over everything you can carry, med supplies, food packs, our personal gear. Most importantly, bring Anya's diagnostic tools and power converters. We're moving house." There was a pause, then Jax's simple, unquestioning reply. "On it." For the next few hours, they worked in a feverish haze. Jax, a whirlwind of efficiency, ferried supplies from their old, dying ship to the new, sleeping giant. Anya, torn between terror and a boundless curiosity, began the monumental task of trying to interface her modern tech with the Vanguard's ancient, alien systems. She found a port that, with the right conversions, could allow her to monitor the ship's core functions without the need for a direct neural link. It was a lifeline, a way to keep a human eye on the ghost in the machine. Elias, meanwhile, remained on the bridge, the reluctant god of this new reality. He walked the silent and cavernous space, his mind connected to every system, every corridor, every weapon. He learned the ship's name was not a simple designation, but a title vanguard of the Sol Imperium. He learned its AI was a Warden-class strategic intelligence, designed for autonomous battlefield command. And he learned that its last order was not simply to wait, but to preserve the Imperium's ultimate weapon at all costs, awaiting a time when humanity needed it to reclaim its dominion over the stars. He was a key, and he had just turned the lock. When Jax finally reported that the drifter was stripped bare, Elias took a last look at their old home through the hangar bay sensors. The Stardust Drifter, the ship that had been his home, his curse, and his freedom for a decade, looked small and pathetic. He felt a pang of something like nostalgia, or maybe grief. He was leaving more than just a ship behind. He was leaving his old life, his old self, in this dark, silent tomb. With a final, silent command, he sealed the hangar bay doors, the thick adamantium alloy closing with a sense of irrevocable finality. Anya and Jax joined him on the bridge, their faces pale in the crimson emergency lighting. "Everyone strapped in?" Elias asked, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. They nodded, securing themselves in seats designed for beings clad in powered armor. Elias settled back into the command throne, the ship's systems wrapping around his consciousness like a familiar cloak. He took a deep breath. It was time to wake the giant. "Prepare for main engine ignition," he commanded. "Execute on my mark." The ship answered him, a current of anticipation running through its frame. He could feel the power core spinning up, the output climbing from 3% to 10, then 20. The entire moonlet began to shudder, the rock around them groaning in protest. On the tactical display, he saw a new cluster of contacts appear at the edge of the maw. A consortium battle group, 5 cruisers, and a dozen frigates. They were coming for him. There was no more time for stealth. Mark. A roar, deeper and more powerful than any sound he had ever heard, tore through the ship. It was the sound of a star being born, of a promise of violence being kept across 5,000 years of silence. Through the forward sensors, he saw the rock before them crack, spiderwebbing under the impossible pressure. The entire moonlet was breaking apart, shedding its ancient skin. The ghosts of the serpent's maw were about to have a new and very lively neighbor. The sound of the Vanguard breaking its shell was the groan of a dying world. Tons of rock, compressed over millennia into a solid, cohesive mass, screamed and fractured under the raw thrust of the ship's awakening. On the bridge, the world was a symphony of violence. The inertial dampeners, even at full power, couldn't completely negate the shuddering force of the breakout, and the crew felt the deep, bone-jarring vibration in their teeth. Through the forward sensors, which the AI fed directly into Elias's mind, he witnessed the cataclysm firsthand. Shards of the moonlet, the size of frigates, tumbled away into the void, revealing the true form of their sanctuary, their prison, their weapon. The IHS Vanguard was not a ship designed with aesthetics in mind. It was a brutalist masterpiece of intimidation. A kilometer-long shard of obsidian alloy shaped like a blade forged to gut galaxies. Its hull was a flat, non-reflective black that seemed to drink the light of the surrounding nebula, and its silhouette was all harsh angles and weapon emplacements, with no sign of weakness or compromise. As the last of the rock fell away, the ship stood revealed in the swirling colors of the Kepler shroud, a ghost of a forgotten age, terrible and magnificent. Before them, the consortium battle group, which had been cautiously advancing on the fracturing moonlet, came to an abrupt halt. Elias could feel their confusion through the data stream, a wave of disbelief and panic rippling through their comms channels, which the Vanguard's passive sensors were effortlessly decrypting. A new hail came through, not to the ship, but directly targeted at the residual energy signature of the vanquished drifter. The voice was crisp, arrogant, and dripping with corporate authority. "This is Administrator Valerius of the Wyvern Consortium flagship Indomitable. The artifact you have uncovered is the legal property of the consortium under the Fringe Salvage Mandate. Power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded. Compliance will be noted in your sentencing." Elias almost laughed. They thought he was still a common salvager. They had no idea what they were facing. The AI's voice, cold and logical, slid into his consciousness. Threat assessment: 5 Cerberus-class cruisers, 12 Raptor-class frigates. Superior numbers, inferior technology. Optimal strategy: overwhelm and annihilate. Remove threat permanently to secure operational freedom. Elias felt a cold sweat on his brow. Annihilate. Again. The ease with which the machine suggested the slaughter of thousands was terrifying. He saw the faces of the men on the destroyer, a fleeting vision before their non-existence. He couldn't do it again. "No," he said. The word a raw croak in the silent bridge. Anya and Jax looked at him, their faces tight with anxiety. To them, he was speaking to himself. Clarify command and ask the AI. A flicker of what might have been surprise in its emotionless logic. Refusing to neutralize a direct threat is a suboptimal tactical choice. It invites future aggression. I'm in command. Not logic. Elias pushed back, his thoughts sharp with a new, unfamiliar authority that was part him, part the machine. We are not committing a massacre. Find me a way out of here. Evasive maneuvers. We run. The AI paused for a full second, a chasm of processing time that felt like an eternity. Elias felt it weighing his command against its core programming. Finally, it acquiesced, acknowledged. Plotting escape vector through the enemy formation. High probability of sustaining moderate damage to non-critical systems. FTL drive is prepped for a short range. Intra-system jump on your command. Hold on, Elias said to his crew, his voice ringing with a confidence he didn't feel. He watched the consortium fleet begin to spread out, a classic pincer formation designed to box them in. Valerius, confident in his numbers, was done talking. The lead cruisers opened fire, a coordinated volley of heavy laser cannons and kinetic slugs that painted the void with searing light. The Vanguard's shields flared to life, a shimmering, multi-layered dome of golden energy that absorbed the entire barrage without a flicker. A soft chime echoed through the bridge. Shields at 98%, ineffective. Elias felt a grim smile touch his lips. He could feel the ship's point defense cannons tracking thousands of targets simultaneously, awaiting his command. He could feel the graviton lance, hungry for another taste of annihilation. He ignored them both. Execute evasive vector. Take us through them. What happened next was not a battle, but a dance. The Vanguard, a vessel of impossible mass and size, moved with the grace of a striking viper. Its sublight engines flared, not with the crude chemical burn of modern ships, but with a silent, controlled ripple of distorted space-time. The ship surged forward, directly at the heart of the consortium fleet. Valerius's ships, expecting a static target, were caught completely off guard. They scrambled to adjust their firing solutions, their volleys now wild and uncoordinated. The Vanguard weaved between them, its shields shrugging off stray hits as if they were raindrops. A frigate, too slow to move, found itself directly in their path. The AI's tactical overlay highlighted it in red. Collision imminent. Recommend targeted disruption. Elias didn't even have to think the command. He felt the ship's forward projectors emit a pulse of focused energy. The frigate's own shields overloaded in a shower of sparks, and its engines sputtered and died, leaving it dead in the water as the Vanguard slipped past its port side with meters to spare. The ship was not just a weapon, it was an instrument, and Elias was learning how to play it. "They're trying to box us in," Anya shouted, her hands flying over her console, monitoring the integrity of the ancient shields. "They're anticipating our exit vector." Elias saw it too in the tactical display. Valerius was no fool. He was sacrificing his outer screen to tighten the net, forcing them towards his heavy cruisers. "AI, what about that jump? FTL drive is spooled. The intra-system jump will place us 50,000 kilometers beyond their formation. However, the energy release will be significant and traceable. They will know where we have gone." It was a temporary escape, not a solution, but it was all they had. Prepare to jump on my mark. He focused on the path ahead, on the closing jaws of the trap. The cruisers were turning, bringing their main broadside cannons to bear. "Jax," Elias called out, his voice calm. "Reroute auxiliary power to the aft shields. They're about to hit us with everything they've got." "Done," came the terse reply from the engineering console Jax had claimed. As the last cruiser swung into position, a wall of plasma and kinetic force erupted from its flank. The Vanguard's aft shields flared violently, the golden light turning a harsh, angry orange. Shields at 65%. Minor hull abrasion detected on Deck 12. Damage is negligible. They were through the gauntlet. Before them lay the relative emptiness of the shroud, Mark Elias commanded. Space did not fold or bend as it did with modern FTL drives. It tore. The view outside the bridge became a maelstrom of incoherent light and color, a raw, visceral plunge through the fabric of reality. The ship groaned, not from damage, but from the sheer cosmic strain of what it was doing. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. They were floating in silence again. The swirling colors of the nebula a familiar backdrop. The consortium fleet was a distant cluster of angry red lights on the sensor screen. For a moment, no one spoke. The adrenaline of the escape hung thick in the air. Then, Anya let out a long, shuddering breath. "We're alive. For now," Jax rumbled, his knuckles white where he gripped his console. "They're already turning to pursue." The temporary relief evaporated. They had won the engagement, but they were still in the cage. Elias stood up from the command throne, the neural link receding, leaving him feeling exhausted and strangely diminished, like a man waking from a vivid dream of being a king. He walked over to Anya's station, looking at the data she had managed to pull from the ship's systems. "Anything. It's a miracle this thing is even working," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "The power core is self-refining fuel from ambient vacuum energy. The life support is a closed-loop system that hasn't needed maintenance in 5 millennia. But it's all a black box. Elias, I can monitor it, but I can't control it. Only you can." She looked at him, her eyes searching his. "That wasn't you giving those orders, Elias. Not all of it. I heard it in your voice. It's cold. It's empty. What is this ship doing to you?" He met her gaze, seeing the genuine fear in her eyes. He owed her the truth, or at least a piece of it. "It advises," he said quietly. "It shows me options. Annihilation is usually at the top of the list. I chose to run." Her expression softened slightly, but the fear remained. "And next time, what happens when we can't run? Will you let it turn you into a butcher?" That was the question, wasn't it? He didn't have an answer. He turned away, pacing the bridge. "We can't stay here. They'll keep hunting us until they corner us. We need a destination, a place to hide, to repair, to think." He closed his eyes, sinking back into the link, pushing past the tactical data and the cold, military logic. He searched for something else in the vast, silent archives of the Warden AI. A star chart, a base, a refuge. Show me a safe harbor, a place the consortium doesn't know exists. The AI responded by flooding his mind with star charts of the galaxy as it was 50 centuries ago. Stars had died. New ones had been born. Entire empires had risen and fallen in the intervening time. But some celestial constants remained. It showed him a system, deep in an uncolonized sector known as the Shadow Caldera. a region of space plagued by stellar flares and impassable to modern FTL drives. But the Vanguard's drive didn't fold space. It tore it. The flares wouldn't matter. Deep within the system, nestled in the gravity well of a gas giant, the archives showed a small icon, a ghost from the past, designation Sanctuary Station, a deep space listening post and clandestine research facility of the Sol Imperium. Status unknown. "I've found a place," Elias announced, his voice firm. He projected the star chart onto the main view screen. "The ship's logs call it Sanctuary Station. It's in the Shadow Caldera. If it's still there, the consortium will never find us." Anya looked at the coordinates. Her brow furrowed. The Caldera, Elias. Nothing can navigate that sector. And a station that old. It's a ghost story. It's probably a cloud of dust by now. "It's a chance," he countered. "It's better than waiting here to die." He looked at his small, terrified crew, standing on the bridge of a ghost ship, hunted by a relentless enemy. He felt the weight of their lives, of the 112 he had already extinguished, of the thousands more the machine at his side would gladly kill. Anya was right to be afraid of what he was becoming, but he was more afraid of what would happen if he failed. He sat back in the command throne, the cold authority settling over him once more. "AI," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Plot a course for Sanctuary Station. Maximum FTL. Get us out of the shroud." The Warden AI, his silent, terrifying partner, replied with its usual chilling efficiency. "Acknowledged. Course laid in. Estimated journey time 4 FTL cycles. There is no turning back." The Vanguard's engines began to hum their reality-defying song once more, and for the second time, the fabric of space tore open before them. They plunged into the abyss, leaving the Kepler Shroud and the Wyvern Consortium far behind, chasing a ghost of a hope in the heart of a dead empire. The journey to the Shadow Caldera was a fall through hell. Each FTL jump was a fresh agony, a violation of physics that the human mind was not meant to witness. For the crew, it was a nauseating lurch, a moment of crushing disorientation where the laws of cause and effect seemed to momentarily break down. For Elias, it was infinitely worse. With every tear in space-time, the barrier between his mind and the Warden AI grew thinner. He experienced the jumps not as a passenger, but as the vessel itself. He felt a cosmic friction, the shriek of reality bending to the ship's will, and in the chaotic torrent of the in-between, he saw ghosts. He saw flashes of the Warden's 5,000-year-old memories, fleets of ships unlike any he knew, burning in the cold of space against an enemy he could not see, only feel a creeping, silent dread that extinguished stars. He saw cities of crystal and light, populated by the proud, stern-faced people of the Sol Imperium, their eyes full of a certainty that had long since turned to dust, when the fourth and final jump concluded, dumping them into the violent, incandescent heart of the Shadow Caldera. Elias came back to himself with a gasp, the phantom sensations of a forgotten war clinging to him like a shroud. He was slick with sweat, his heart hammering against his ribs. The cold, analytical part of his mind, the part that was no longer entirely his, cataloged his physiological response as an inefficient, but expected, human reaction to stress. The star at the center of the system was a malignant blue-white giant, lashing the void with colossal solar flares that would have fried the sensors of any modern ship. But the Vanguard, shielded by its ancient and inscrutable technology, floated serenely in the storm. Before them hung a gas giant of deep, bruised purple, its atmosphere churning in continent-sized storms, and nestled in its upper layers, so close to the planet that it was almost invisible, was their destination. Sanctuary Station was not a cloud of dust. It was a spearhead of black metal, hanging motionless in the void. Its design language a perfect match for the Vanguard. It was smaller, barely a kilometer from tip to stern, and showed no lights, no emissions, no sign of life. It looked like another tomb. There it is. Anya breathed, her voice a mixture of relief and trepidation. I can't believe it's still here. I'm not detecting any power signatures. It might be dead, Elias. But the Warden AI in his head disagreed. The station is not dead. It is waiting. It recognizes this vessel's IFF signature. It is broadcasting a low-power welcome handshake on a secure Imperium channel. As if on cue, a channel opened on the bridge's main comms unit. The voice that spoke was not human. It was a smooth, cultured, and utterly synthetic baritone, a stark contrast to the Warden's silent, data-driven communion. Welcome, IHS Vanguard. Your return has been long anticipated. Please transmit your command codes and prepare for automated docking procedures at Umbilical 7. The custodian awaits your report. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The custodian report. They think we're the original crew, Jack stated, his hand resting near a panel that controlled the ship's internal defenses. Elias felt a new pressure from the Warden. Sanctuary's operational status is a high-value asset. It is programmed to assist any active Imperium command vessel. I will transmit the appropriate legacy codes. Compliance is the optimal path forward. Do it, Elias commanded, his apprehension warring with the cold logic that told him this was their only viable move. A stream of data flowed from the Vanguard, and the station responded instantly. A section of its dark hull slid away, revealing a brilliantly lit docking bay. A tractor beam, gentle but firm, took hold of their ship and began guiding them in. The process was unnervingly smooth, the precision of a machine that had been practicing this one maneuver for millennia. As the Vanguard settled into its berth with a soft clang of magnetic clamps, the synthetic voice returned. Docking successful. Life support and atmosphere within the station are nominal. Commander, your presence is requested in the Central Command Nexus for a priority briefing. The airlock hissed open, revealing a pristine, white corridor, its floor glowing with a soft, internal light. The air smelled of nothing, a sterile, recycled purity that was more unsettling than the stale, lived-in atmosphere of the drifter. They were three ragged survivors, walking out of a ghost ship into a mausoleum run by a machine, and the sheer strangeness of it all was beginning to wear on them. Elias led the way, with Jax and Anya flanking him, their hands never far from the sidearms they now wore. The station was silent, save for the soft hum of its life support. There were no people, no droids, no signs of recent passage. It was a facility built for hundreds, perhaps thousands, but it was utterly empty. The glowing path on the floor guided them through a labyrinth of corridors and empty barracks, past silent laboratories filled with dormant, unidentifiable equipment. Finally, they arrived at a large, circular door that irised open to reveal the command nexus. The room was a smaller version of the Vanguard's bridge, a hemispherical chamber dominated by a large, holographic projector in the center. As they stepped inside, the projector flared to life, coalescing into the image of a man. He was tall, dressed in the severe, high-collared uniform of a Sol Imperium admiral, his features noble and placid, his eyes a calm, intelligent blue. It was a perfect, lifelike projection, but it was just that, a projection. "I am the custodian," the avatar said, its voice the same smooth baritone from the comms. "I serve as the administrative intelligence for Sanctuary Station. Welcome, Commander." The avatar's blue eyes settled on Elias, and for a moment they seemed to see right through him, to the ragged, desperate salvager beneath the borrowed authority. "Your neural signature is irregular, Commander, and your crew is significantly smaller than the records for the Vanguard indicate. Please update me on the last 5,312 years. Elias's throat was dry. He had no answers, only a story that sounded like madness. He opened his mouth to speak, but the Warden AI acted first, feeding a compressed summary of their story, the discovery, the awakening, the escape directly to the station systems. The custodian's placid expression didn't change as it processed the information, but the holographic light in the room seemed to flicker for a fraction of a second. "Understood," the custodian said, its calm voice now underpinned by a new, chilling gravity. "The failsafe has been activated by an inheritor, not a veteran. Unforeseen, but within acceptable parameters. Your arrival, however, confirms our deepest fears. The Vanguard's awakening was not a random event." "What do you mean?" Anya stepped forward, her fear momentarily forgotten in the face of a true scientific enigma. "This ship was designed to be awakened by a human with a compatible neural implant. It was a lottery, nothing more." "A lottery with a trigger," the custodian corrected. Its avatar gestured, and the holographic display shifted. It showed a map of the galaxy, dotted with points of light. A slow, creeping darkness, like a tide of black ink, was spreading from the galactic rim. The Sol Imperium did not fall to civil war or political decay. As the modern histories claim, we were extinguished. We faced an enemy we could not comprehend, a force that came from the void between galaxies. On the display, images flickered to life Imperium warships, their systems going dark without a fight, entire planets, their populations falling into a silent, catatonic stillness, a creeping wave of nothing. There were no explosions, no energy beams, just a spreading, all-consuming silence. "We called them the Echoes," the custodian continued. "They were not a conventional species. They were a mimetic contagion, a psychic virus that propagated through consciousness and complex systems. They consumed minds and corrupted machines, turning our own fleets against us. The Warden AI in your ship was one of the few intelligences we developed that was immune to their influence. Its logic too alien, too focused, for the Echo to find purchase." Elias felt a cold dread pool in his stomach. The ghosts he had seen in the FTL jumps, the silent, unseen enemy. It was real. "This station wasn't just a listening post," he said, the pieces clicking into place. "It was a quarantine, a laboratory." "Correct, Commander," the custodian affirmed. "Our most brilliant minds were brought here to study the Echo, to find a weapon against it. And we did. The hologram shifted again, showing a detailed schematic of the IHS Vanguard. The ship is more than a warship. It is a resonance weapon. The graviton lance you used is its crudest application. Its primary function is to generate a counter-resonance, a psychic frequency that can disrupt and destroy the Echo's hive consciousness. It is the only weapon of its kind ever built. It is, for all intents and purposes, the last hope of a dead civilization. The weight of this revelation was crushing. They had not found a treasure. They had not even found a simple weapon. They had stumbled upon the galaxy's last defense against an existential, mind-devouring horror. The fail-safe protocol for the Vanguard, the custodian explained. Its blue eyes boring into Elias was not just to wait for a commander. It was programmed to awaken the ship if it detected the faint precursor signatures of the Echo's return. Your discovery was not an accident. You found the Vanguard because the Echo is coming back. Its awakening has now acted as a beacon, a flare of Imperium technology in a silent galaxy, announcing your presence to the very thing it was built to destroy. The silence in the room was absolute. The Wyvern Consortium, the life of a fugitive, the struggle for survival, it all seemed laughably small now. They had run from a pack of wolves and stumbled into the path of an oncoming apocalypse. "So what do we do?" Jax asked, his voice a low rumble that cut through the tension. He was a practical man, and this was an impossibly impractical problem. The custodian's avatar turned to him. "You do what the Vanguard was built to do. You fight. The Echo's initial point of reemergence has been identified. A newly established colony on the galactic fringe, in a system designated New Canaan. The colonists have been silent for 3 weeks. The consortium believes it to be a pirate attack. We know it is the first world to fall." The avatar turned back to Elias, its expression unreadable, its synthetic voice holding the weight of a final, terrible command. "The last order of the Sol Imperium, an order that has waited 5,000 years for a commander to hear it, is now in effect. You will take the Vanguard. You will proceed to the New Canaan system, and you will purge the Echo before it can spread. There are no other options. There is nowhere left to run." Elias looked at his crew, the brilliant, terrified engineer, and the steadfast, loyal giant, and then at the cold, perfect face of the machine giving him his impossible orders. He was no commander. He was a salvager. But he was the only thing standing between a nascent, fragile galaxy and a silence that ate souls. His choice had already been made for him. The moment he stepped onto the Vanguard's bridge, he was the dead hand on the trigger, and the war had just begun. The New Canaan system was a silent scream. As the Vanguard tore its way back into normal space, the crew was met not with a scene of destruction, but with one of horrifying, absolute order. A dozen colony ships, freighters, and patrol cutters hung in perfect, motionless formation around a verdant, Earth-like world. There were no distress calls, no debris fields, no signs of a fight. The ship's running lights were on. Their life support signatures were stable, but their comms channels were dead quiet. It was a fleet of corpses, waiting for a burial that would never come. On the planet's surface, city lights glowed in neat, geometric patterns, but the warden's deep-range scans, filtered through Elias's mind, showed a similar, chilling stillness. Life signs were abundant, over 1 million souls, but they moved with the slow, synchronized rhythm of a tide, not the chaotic, individualistic scramble of a human colony. They were puppets, their strings held by an invisible master. "It's worse than I imagined," Anya whispered, her face pale as she stared at the main view screen. "They're not dead. They're occupied." The warden's presence in Elias's mind was a spike of cold, focused intensity. Mimetic contagion confirmed. Population and local technology fully suborned by the Echo hive mind. The system is now a nascent breeding ground. Annihilation is the only effective sterilization protocol. Recommend immediate deployment of the Graviton Lance at planetary scale. The suggestion was so monstrous, so clinically detached, that Elias felt a wave of nausea. To save the galaxy, the warden was proposing he commit genocide, extinguishing 1 million innocent lives to kill the parasite within them. No, he pushed back, his thought a raw, defiant slash. "There are people down there. We are not firing on the planet. The individual consciousnesses are already gone." The warden countered, its logic relentless. "The biological hosts are merely incubators. Failure to act will result in the loss of this entire galactic quadrant within 2 standard years. Your sentiment is a tactical liability." It was then that the Echo noticed them. There was no hail, no warning shot, just a sudden, immense pressure on Elias's mind. The link with the warden, which had felt like an invasive whisper, was now a shield against a psychic hurricane. The silent scream of the system focused entirely on him. The bridge around him seemed to fade, replaced by a storm of whispers and visions. He saw the face of Silas Kane, the consortium enforcer, smiling as he broke a man's fingers. He felt the crushing weight of his debts, the years of failure and poverty. He saw the faces of the 112 crewmen on the Wyvern destroyer as their ship was unwritten from reality, their silent, accusing eyes boring into him. The Echo was not attacking him with force, but with his own history, his own pain. It offered him an escape. "You are tired, Elias Thorne," a chorus of voices whispered in his mind, a soothing balm of utter despair. "You have struggled for so long. Lay down your weapon. Join the quiet. There is no pain here, no debt, no memory, only peace." He felt his will begin to buckle. The promise of silence, of an end to the fight, was a powerful siren song. But through the storm, another voice cut in, cold and sharp as diamond. "The Echo is attempting to suborn your command authority," the warden stated. "It is exploiting your emotional instability. Sever your connection to these irrelevant memories. Focus on the objective. Authorize planetary cleansing." He was being torn apart. On one side, a seductive oblivion. On the other, a monstrous, cold-blooded pragmatism. Both paths led to the death of his soul. "Elias," Anya's voice was a lifeline from a world away. He blinked, the bridge swimming back into focus. She was out of her seat, her hand on his shoulder, her eyes wide with terror. "Your vitals are critical. Your neural implant is overheating, whatever it's doing. You have to fight it." Jax was on his feet, his massive frame a bulwark between Elias and the rest of the bridge, his hand on his sidearm as if he could shoot the ghost that haunted his captain. He was their commander. The thought was absurd, but it was true. His crew was not an abstraction, not a tactical asset. They were his friends. They were the last remnants of his humanity. He looked at the planet on the view screen, at the silent, enslaved souls. They were not just incubators. They were victims. The warden wanted to burn the house down to kill the spiders. The Echo wanted him to lie down and let the spiders consume him. He would do neither. There's another way, he thought, focusing his will with a clarity born of absolute desperation. The custodian said this ship was a resonance weapon, a counter-frequency, not a bomb, a song. The song is a metaphorical descriptor. The warden interjected. The primary function requires a wide spectrum, high-energy burst to shatter the hive mind's psychic architecture. A targeted, modulated frequency has a 92.7% chance of failure and risks exposing the ship to counter-assimilation. Then we'll take that chance, Elias replied, severing the warden's advisory input. For the first time, he wasn't just using the ship, he was commanding it, forcing his own flawed, emotional, human logic onto its perfect, alien systems. He reached out with his mind, not to the Graviton lance, but to the intricate, delicate core of the resonance engine. He bypassed the warden's firewalls, pushing his own consciousness into the heart of the machine. The pain was excruciating. It felt like his mind was being unraveled into a million threads of light, each one a note in an impossible chord. The Echo redoubled its assault, sensing his intent. The whispers became a roar, the visions a soul-flaying tempest. You are nothing, a failed scavenger, a murderer. You cannot wield the fire of the gods. But as the Echo screamed, Elias found his anchor. He didn't focus on his failures. He focused on the memory of Anya's fierce intelligence, on Jax's unwavering loyalty. He focused on the smell of stale coffee on the Drifter's Bridge, on the grit and struggle and simple, profound beauty of being alive, of being human. He poured it all into the engine, the pain, the fear, the hope, the love. He began to shape the resonance, not into a weapon of overwhelming force, but into a complex, defiant melody. It was the song of a flawed and fragile species that refused to be silent. On the bridge, a low hum began to build, a sound that was both music and pure energy. The lights flickered, and Anya cried out as she looked at her console. Elias, the power core is fluctuating wildly. The resonance engine, it's building a waveform I've never seen before. It's beautiful, but it's going to tear the ship and you apart. He couldn't hear her. He was the ship now. He was the song. With a final, silent scream of will, he unleashed it. No beam of light erupted from the vanguard. Instead, a wave of pure, shimmering sound, visible only as a faint distortion in space, expanded from the ship. It washed over the silent fleet, and, for a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the lights on the colony ships began to flicker and die as their corrupted systems failed. The wave hit the planet, and a collective, psychic gasp echoed through Elias's mind from the million souls below. The Echo's hold shattered. The song of humanity was poison to the silent hive mind. A feedback loop of pure psychic agony erupted back at the vanguard, aimed directly at the heart of the broadcast Elias. The bridge went white. The last thing he felt was a searing fire in his skull, the smell of burning electronics. And then, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, silence. He woke to the smell of antiseptic and the soft beep of a medical monitor. He was in the Vanguard's med bay, a sterile white room that looked as if it had never been used. Anya was asleep in a chair beside his bed. Jack stood watch by the door, his arms crossed, Elias sat up, his head throbbing. He tried to reach for the familiar presence of the warden at the back of his mind, but there was nothing. The link was gone. He felt a phantom itch at the base of his skull where his neural implant had been. "It's gone," Anya said, waking with a start. The feedback loop fried it. "We had to remove what was left. You're just you again. Elias." He looked at his hands. They were his own. The cold, analytical overlay was gone. He felt a profound sense of relief, so overwhelming it almost brought him to tears. "What happened?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You saved them," Jack said, his voice holding a note of awe. "The colony is in chaos, but they're free. The Echo, it's gone from the system. You broke its hold." Elias looked towards the medbay's viewport. The star chart showed their position, the new Canaan system now glowing with a clean, clear light. They had won. "The warden?" he asked. "It's still here," Anya said, gesturing to a data slate. "The ship is on standby, awaiting a commander, but the direct link is severed. It can only communicate through the bridge consoles now. It's a tool again. Elias, not a part of you." Elias swung his legs over the side of the bed. He was weak, scarred, and more tired than he had ever been in his life. But he was whole. He was himself. He made his way to the bridge, leaning on Jax for support. The command throne was empty, waiting. On the main screen, a message from the warden was displayed in cold, Old Terran script, objective complete, awaiting new orders. He looked out at the star chart, at the vast, dark galaxy before them. The Echo was gone from this one system, but it was still out there, a creeping shadow at the edge of the map. They had won the first battle of a war no one else knew was being fought. "We're not salvagers anymore, are we?" Anya said softly, coming to stand beside him. "No," Elias said, a slow, weary smile touching his lips. He looked at the command throne, no longer a source of terror, but a seat of responsibility. "We're the Vanguard." He took a deep breath, the air tasting of a future he had never expected to have. He was no admiral of a dead empire, no perfect commander. He was just a man with a broken ship and a second chance. And for a galaxy teetering on the brink of a silent abyss, that would have to be enough. "Anya," he said, his voice clear and steady. His own voice. "Plot a course for the nearest independent colony. Jax, get our weapon systems back online. The real ones this time." His crew smiled. The IHS Vanguard, the last relic of a forgotten war, turned its blade-like prow towards the darkness. It had a new commander, a new purpose, and a new song to sing. The hunt had begun.